like to call the recess meeting back to order, the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners. The recess meeting September 10, 2012 at 6 p.m. Commissioners, you've had a chance to review the agenda for some time. If there's not any discussion or questions about the agenda, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move for approval. Second.
Got a motion made by Commissioner Flint, second by Commissioner Travis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. The agenda for tonight has been approved. Adam, looks like you're on tap for tonight.
Does that go?
That means you got the floor.
Don't be long with it.
If it wouldn't be out of order, would it be okay if maybe you took the time to just go around the table and see who's here? And I don't know if everybody knows everybody.
That would be a great idea. I would say we can go ahead and start over here, and everybody introduce yourself where everybody knows everybody.
Okay. Starting. Okay. Good evening, Commissioner Harold Bass, Rockingham County.
Commissioner Tommy Flint,
Rockingham County. Craig Travis, Rockingham County.
Jennifer Nixon, Rockingham County Healthcare Alliance.
Pat Galloway, Rockingham County Finance Director.
William Morton, County Health Director.
Nancy Crutchfield, Chairman, Board of Health.
Teresa Lowe, Chairman of the DSS Board.
Larry Johnson, DSS Director.
Ben Neal, Assistant County Manager and HR Director.
Lance Musser, County Manager.
Adam Lindsay, Director of Strategic Management.
Amy Klein, Clerk to the moment.
James Kellogg, County Commissioner.
and I'm Keith May, Chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for catching that, Adam. Good catch as always.
Thank you.
And continue on with your program.
All right. We've also asked if they're available representatives from or members of the Public Health Board and also the Department of Social Services Board, and some of them may be in the audience. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the recent legislation that has been passed regarding the option that counties now have to consolidate their human service agencies. And what we'd like to do is outline some of the information that we have received and some of our progress to date, and then solicit some input from the commissioners on some of the questions that are out there. One order of business that we didn't consider when we first presented the agenda to you was we'd like to bring up when it's appropriate as well, and that is adding an additional member to our ad hoc committee. Some of us felt like given what some of the changes might mean related to technology, it might be advantageous to have David Wicker, our Information Services Director, or a designee, as represented on our ad hoc committee. And that if it's not inappropriate at one point, we'd like to get the board's approval of that action item. What we've done, and just sort of recap a little bit of history, in April, the board approved the evaluation of moving towards a consolidated human services model like we saw in Buncombe County. At that time, the legislation was just sort of in the process. It wasn't approved, and several folks, including many sitting around this table, visited Buncombe County and really liked what they saw, but they called themselves a hybrid model. And based on that, we felt like there was a strong incentive to move forward based on the types of things that they were seeing. Well, obviously the legislation, House Bill 438, has been adopted now, and it really is very significant in what it gives counties options, county commissioners, that is, options on how they want to oversee their human services. And I think traditionally we often think of the human services in counties as state agencies, and then the rest of the county is something else. Well, there's really seeing those lines less defined with this legislation and the options that were given. So there are in essence three options that are available to the county commissioners now. If you decide to enact your authority based on this legislation. The first option would be that the Board of County Commissioners can assume the control of activities in human service agencies. And I'm going to talk tonight mostly about DSS and public health, but it's not restricted to those, but that's the context that we've had our conversations in the past, so I'll probably refer to those two agencies. But that first option would mean that in essence you as the board could serve as the board that currently exists in those two programs. However, the legislation is very clear about, in particular the public health side, that you have to have an advisory committee that's very specific in its membership and would look very much like the membership they currently have on their board, and that has a lot of medical health professionals and some others, and that's written into the legislation that you can't do away with that, but they would become an advisory committee as opposed to the board of public health. And that's really option number one. Option number two is that you as the commissioners can create a consolidated human services agency. And again, if we're talking in the context of DSS and public health, you would then create a consolidated human services board that would function in much of the same way that you now expect your public health and your social services board to function. But it grants new authority to you as the commissioners to have some oversight in those things. And another significant flexibility that is now granted to commissioners if you go that route is to also, you have the opportunity to eliminate adherence to the State Personnel Act. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in reality, we've done a lot of those things already here when we became substantially equivalent to the State Personnel Act, with the exception of one provision. Now, option three is in essence the same as option two, in the sense that you can create a consolidated agency, but then you could also serve as the board of that consolidated agency. And again, you would still have to have your Public Health Advisory Committee, but under that option, because you're a consolidated agency, you could also eliminate the State Personnel Act under that option number three. So those are your three options that really the legislation allows, that are in the context of the conversations we've had. There's some other things related to multi-county things, but that's not something we've explored, and I don't think the board had a lot of interest in going that route, so I'm not going to spend any time talking about that in today's meeting. So we're going to cover some of these things I'm not sure if the format you want to ask questions now or wait till I'm done talking, but we're going to get into some of those more specifics of what you can do with those options. To continue with what we've done so far, we have met with our. I personally have been able to meet with both the Board of Public Health and the Board of Social Services. And of course invited them to tonight's meeting and let them know that this was obviously something the commissioners are considering, and that they obviously have some very strong interest in the outcomes of your decisions, because it impacts well the programs and services that they care deeply about as those advisory boards. So we've met with them, and also you that's already taken action in creating the advisory committee, the ad hoc committee, in other words, which purpose was to inform you all as we move forward in this process. And everyone at this table is on that committee, and they have all willingly accepted the opportunity to have some influence and input in this as we move forward. The things that we know we want to do, regardless of whether we do anything with the legislation, is getting back to the April assignment that you gave us, and that is, we want to be a more results-based organization in the way we manage our health and human services. And that's what we saw in Buncombe County, is they've really taken on that in a very real way that I think a lot of us saw as very, very positive and the right way to do things. So regardless of whether you said you wanted to consolidate or not, we can do that, and we will continue to pursue those things in the meantime, whether we have a decision on how you want to consolidate or not. But I think that as we've met with stakeholders, and many of them are in the room tonight for sure, there are certainly a lot of questions that I think that they are looking for answers for us to. And I think the biggest question is just is the why question. Why does the board have an interest in doing this? And then along those lines, their questions are going to be, what would be the role of and the authority of the boards as they exist or don't exist in the future. What's the risk of certainly lost or diminished services if we do this the right way versus the wrong way? What is going to be the influence of politics on what has traditionally been seen as a buffer or a barrier to having too much political influence in providing services and human services? And then what kind of challenges might it present to fill those boards with qualified persons if they feel like their role is diminished? Of course, on the flip side, I think there's also some level of excitement about the opportunities to be more efficient in outcomes, to avoid costs where we can, and then in reality meet the needs of our community that are not being met yet. We can't say that everyone's being met adequately, so the opportunity to improve that would be, I think, of great interest to the people serving. And I think one of the things that I've heard already from some other counties who are looking at this is they like, from the consolidated agency standpoint, the flexibility that it provides. Right now, these agencies exist as they always have, in very structured silos, but we know that a lot of their clients overlap, and we know that in some cases services overlap to some extent. If you have more flexibility, you might be able to provide services in a more unique way that you don't have the flexibility to do right now. So those are the kind of things that we have talked about as the ad hoc committee has met kind of on before we were an ad hoc committee, and we talked about that a little bit. So that's sort of what we've done to date, and some of the questions and I think some of the hopes from those that have been involved are wanting to have some discussion about. Furthermore, on last week we had a webinar from the School of Government, and they're very involved in this process. As you already know, you gave us approval to request a facilitation from them that has been submitted, that decisions won't be made until at least after the 21st, which was their deadline. And I'd like to just highlight some of the things that we saw in that webinar with you, and I'm going to go to that so people in the audience can see what we're talking about as well.
Mr.
Oh, excuse me.
Did you give us the option to ask questions as we go? Are these on? Okay. Let me ask you, is there any of the three options that are stated here, does the discussion to follow differ if a recommended option is so stated?
Are you saying, do we have a recommendation, or is the
Well,
board?
no, I'm saying of the three options that we have offered, does the discussion that follows, will it be more germane to a particular option if we chose the options that we're going to concentrate on?
Let me answer it this way. This is all very new, and I think there's still a lot of information that we're all trying to understand. If I was providing some feedback from those that we've already talked to, I think there is probably some stronger interest in option two. If the board, in fact, is going to make a choice, that's probably where folks are right now leaning towards. But that's not been formally asked of the boards that are out there, and that might be something we want to do. What I would recommend is that the Board of Commissioners not formally take an action this evening, but actually give that assignment to the ad hoc committee to come back with a recommendation. Of course, there's representatives from both of those boards right now on that committee, and that way I think you would know at least where the two boards stand, and staff that would be part of that ad hoc committee.
Well said, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Adam, am I correct in saying we're here to hear what they have to say and for us to tell them what we're looking for in this consolidation effort?
I think it would be correct to say that they're
because I want to hear what they have to say back.
I think that it's mutual, that there's some interest in them wanting to hear what you as the board, your interest levels and why you want to do this.
Okay.
And I think that will set the tone for how the ad hoc committee ultimately comes up with a recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, and as we go through this, if you got, as Commissioner Bass did, just let me know, because I'll maybe read, and we can get those questions answered at that time. Because the presentation may be lengthy, and then we may forget where we were, because some of us are over 55.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, I am. Okay, Adam, continue.
Well, lost my slides, so let me try and reopen it just to see if I can get to connect again.
Sure.
I'm up
Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
I got it.
Thank you.
Well, I apologize to the audience. For some reason, my slides end after 3 in this. Well, let me proceed and not get too bogged down in that. First of all, the legislation does not do away with the fact that you have to provide public health and social services. Those two things have to exist according to the law. What it does give you some flexibility in how those programs can now be administered. And there are procedures in the legislation for example, if you are going to go with the option to be the board, then there has to be a public hearing and a notice, and you have to go through some procedures. On the other hand, if you are going to do a consolidated agency, you have to nominate a selection committee or a nominating committee. Sorry, that's what I meant to say, is that you create a nominating committee that then comes back to you with who we think or they think should be on that consolidated human services board. So the legislation does outline some procedures and guidelines for how and timelines for how that would have to happen. Probably why option 2 seems appealing is, one, the flexibility thing that I mentioned already, but also it still gives that authority to that consolidated board now on all the details and the work that's currently being done by those two boards, as opposed to the Board of County Commissioners then having to hear and discuss. And you have obviously 2 representatives, commissioners, that sit on those 2 boards. And all the work that they do on those boards, if you can imagine that now coming to the Board of County Commissioners, that might represent a significant increase in your time and efforts in managing programs. So I think that would be one reason not to pursue option number 1 or option number 3, but instead to have a board that's made up of professionals like you currently have that are going to provide you very sound rationale for things as you currently have. But again, it still gives you a lot more flexibility in the management and oversight, and we'll get into some of that. Of course, what you also have the ability to do is, just because you're consolidating into one human services agency and one board, it doesn't say you can't have multiple advisory committees and groups. Just like you would right now, where you have an animal shelter advisory group. They don't have authority to make changes, but they're supposedly experts or interested folks in those areas, and they can advise you on decisions that you're making. So you have the flexibility to create those types of things and programs, very specific to programs still. So that doesn't go away. You just don't statutorily have to have those things if you choose to go this way. Another issue that the ad hoc committee would have to look into are the implications as it relates to the State Personnel Act. And of course, we mentioned before that we are substantially equivalent to the State Personnel Act, with the exception in our employee relations, and that really refers to the disciplinary actions. And so, again, you have the option to eliminate or not with option 2. It doesn't, just by choosing option 2 does not mean you have to eliminate adherence to the State Personnel Act. So those are the basics I think that I wanted to cover with you all regarding the legislation. One thing that I think is important worth mentioning as well is one thing when they wrote this legislation they wanted to be careful of was that counties did not, by consolidating, reduce funding to the human services. And they actually wrote into the legislation that funding has to be maintained at the 2010, 11 levels. And again, that was the intent was that counties didn't see this as a way to cut services and cut their, or bring money back to the general fund. I would add that when we visited Buncombe County, we saw tremendous savings in what they're doing. But they were careful in the way they used those terms, and they referred to them as cost avoidances. And in many cases of where they didn't, they showed a graph of something like $4.5 million in cost avoidances / savings. It was them sometimes for increasing services without adding staff, for example. That's a way of avoiding costs where you would have had to hire more people. So those are the ways that they articulated how they were saving, and I think that would probably be in line with what a lot of our human services agencies believe would be potential with us consolidating. So that's all that I have. If I've missed anything, I would certainly welcome any input from those around the table. But those are the presentations we've heard, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you think, now we can play it however you wish to play it, Adam, but would the representatives like to say anything or throw some questions at us as well as us throwing questions?
If I could recommend the format, I think that the question that I first posed, which was the why question, it might be helpful to have folks around the table, especially those that are in those programs, express their interest in what we want to see change. And if we can start to hear those things, I think it helps the ad hoc committee understand how we can bring something back that would be meaningful to you all.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's more appropriate to have them start or you start, but that would be.
Well, let's just start. Larry, we'll pick on you first.
Well, I guess I'll start off by saying I've been looking at this for a good long while. Way back when Tom Robinson and I started working on the human services concept that I assumed back as 2007. The director up in Buncombe County and I had a good long talk way back then about this as to what kinds of things she was able to achieve at that point. She was, they were just sort of getting started with it, and so I followed it very closely. Also, Wake County has done a consolidated model and has done it for a good long time too, because they had the population to do it. And again, I've been looking at it to see if this is something that might work here. And I do think, even though we're smaller and we certainly don't have the money, the resources that a Buncombe or a Wake does, I think we've got a more compelling reason, maybe in a lot of ways, to do something like this, because I think we're looking at diminishing resources. We're also looking at the fact that we have more people utilizing our services than we've ever had. I don't think in the history of probably either one of our departments has probably ever been more people coming in and using our services. So there's a very good reason, I think, to be looking at it. When I looked at the list, it was kind of interesting that, I don't know if you all got the list that we got from Buncombe County. We've already been pursuing a lot of those things. I mean, DSS, we've already not added staff when a lot of people would have added staff. We came up with different ways to do what we do. So I think, in fact, I think we see it as a very reasonable possibility that as we came together, and I think Glenn and I have had a lot of conversations about it, and I think that we know that there are some achievable things that we can do, and that would benefit the county. I think the better access to our services, the fact that we're probably both looking at a reduction in federal money. I mean, that's what it looks like. I mean, it hasn't been declared officially, but I would say we're both probably going to have less federal money to operate our programs with. So it makes good sense to be looking at ways to do it more efficiently. And so I guess for me, that option 2 has looked really good, because I know there's 2 tangible examples out there that people have done it. You know, Mecklenburg County uses something I guess is similar to the option 1, but my God, they're like a whole state to themselves. You know, they have a huge board, and I don't even understand how that board even operates. But talking to Wake County, they've used the DSS concept and the health concept, and they've been able to maintain a lot of the identity that they had, but they've also gone together as a human services board and been able to move forward. And I think the one thing that's different too, Wake had mental health in the picture when they first started out in this. In this past year, they basically did what we did. They divested it, and they've got a private company running it now. So we're very similar in a lot of ways to Wake. We're just not as big. And Buncombe sort of done the same thing too. So I don't know, am I making sense? I mean, I'm sort of just talking, but it seems to make good sense to me, given the climate that we find ourselves in. It's not like, I've been doing this 25 years, and I've never seen it like it is right now. I mean, this is just something totally different than I've ever worked. The uncertainty and those kinds of things, and so it would almost be good to have something that we could sink our teeth into, you know, that we know we're doing something, that we're moving in the right direction, sort of, regardless of what's going on around us, you know, if that makes any sense.
Well, it certainly, you know, you and I have talked about it a few times, and with Buncombe County being one of the, I guess they first started it, or they initiated, they're very similar. They use option 2.
But that was really the only thing they could do legally at that time.
And option 2 seems to me to fit our bill, you know, in logic thinking. At this point in time, option 2 seems to be something that would fit us. But when you get into the flexibility and the access, as you mentioned, knowing that the feds are going to cut some of our funds out, it's only for us to be proactive in looking at ways to do some consolidation and to have that flexibility. Because if we don't, then our services to our citizens are not going to be very adequate, and they're going to be stumbling over things, and it's going to really not benefit the people who need the services, as I see it. Commissioner Bass got a question for you as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to throw my question out to you, Larry and Glenn, and then I have a question for you, Adam, if I may. I was fortunate to be part of the group that went up to Buncombe County, and we saw how that operation worked. At the end of the day, when we take all the nuts and bolts off and put them back together, who benefits? In my opinion, it looks like the citizens benefits most from this, because it's almost like a one-stop shop, isn't it? Or is it?
It sort of is, and I think the first part for us is going to be figuring out a way to have that one-stop shop, and I think our model is going to have to look different than theirs. I mean, you've got to realize they only have had a consolidated building,
right,
you know, just in the past year. I mean, because before that, they went through 4 years of basically like what we're going to be for a while, and they made it work, and they realized that the best thing to do for them was to come together, but they didn't start out that way. I mean, they segued into that. I mean, it was a gradual change, and yeah.
But in terms of the buildings, and Glenn, please jump in whenever you feel comfortable. We should not have such a big problem because we're so almost already consolidated in the sense that we can handle that more.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah. What do you think, Glenn?
Well, if you're truly looking at that concept of what Buncombe County had, yeah, I think you would have need a central receiving area, you know, where you're, I think one of the things that we probably were impressed about was it's almost like they had Walmart readers at the door. And I think
Right.
there were two, I believe one spoke Spanish and the other, you know, handled, you know, other clients, and then there were, you know, some kiosks where someone came in for, let's say, some lab work or whatever, that they could, that the system would know, you know, that Jane Doe was here, and it was almost kind of like a train station. You know, shortly you would hear, you know, now serving, you know, number so and so or whatever. So, you know, that was very, very impressive. So I think ultimately, you know, you probably want to need that if you're really truly looking at that type of setup. I guess, you know, overall, you know, Rockingham County certainly is a much different community than it was, you know, 15, 20 years ago. And so I think it is wise, you know, for us to look at our service delivery. Is the service delivery model that we had in place 20 or 30 years ago the service delivery model that we need, you know, going forward? At the same token, I guess, you know, when I hear a lot of the discussion about, well, Wake and Buncombe and Mecklenburg, well, they're fundamentally different communities. I mean, you know, we're looking at tier 3 counties, we're tier 1 county. They have resources and the ability to draw things that we just don't have that ability for. So I think really, you know, for us, I guess the way I see it is that it's better for us to look at Rockingham County. What works best for Rockingham County? Because you really can't compare yourself to a Wake County or Mecklenburg County or even Buncombe County. You know, when we looked at Buncombe County, you know, they have one primary care physician for every 400 and so residents. In Rockingham County, we have one primary care physician for every 1,400 and so residents. And so just the ability to have the resources within the community is so different here in Rockingham County than there. Whatever we design, we really need to have it for, you know, designed for our community and the needs of our community and will best serve our community, you know, going forward.
Just two more concerns. As far as the history of the patient or the citizens, I guess it would be the client, whether it's in social service or public health, we could maintain that history, could we not? I mean, in other words, when that person comes in, whether it's a public health concern or social service concern, that history could be communicated between those two agencies, if necessary, immediately, wasn't it?
I had asked the assistant director down at Wake about one of the things that's always a big deal for us at DSS and health and certainly mental health as well too, is that, you know, what information can you share?
Right.
And she gave me this incredible looking matrix. It looks crazy to see it, but what it really says though is that everybody doesn't need access to everything.
Right.
There's some things that we do need access to, and so what they've done is design a model that they get that access when they need it, and it's not a big deal. You know, they get it, but they also don't give out adoption information. They don't give out child protective services. Some of it that's very confidential. They don't give out that information, foster care and those kinds of things. And same with Glenn. Glenn's got lots of things over there that they don't need to share with us. I mean, in order for us to get the job done. But that history, as you said, that it should be in a readily available thing. And that's where Mr. Wicker comes in, you know, is to get him to help us design something that we do have the access that we need quickly.
Thank you, that's great. Adam, my question was for you was the State Personnel Act. Tell me a little bit. Is it in here? It wasn't in the information we got.
It was in the slides that.
Okay, just briefly, what is it? What it does?
Mr. Neal probably explain it better than I could, but basically.
Just a quick dirty.
The employees in social services, for example, fall into the State Personnel Act, which gives them, while they are county employees, they have certain protections in their jobs that don't pertain to all the rest of the county employees. And in particular, the only thing that's really different now is the employee relations provision, and that is the disciplinary action. But when we became substantially equivalent to that act, it meant, and again, I'm going to get tied up a little bit, but the idea is that the hiring practice and the way we measure performance are all in line with the state's requirements, and that was an advantage to Rockingham County in allowing us to make hires the way we do.
Thank you.
Just, if I can summarize just briefly, we have the authority to classify, pay, recruit, select, promote, because of our system being deemed to be equivalent to that of the State Personnel Act. Without asking the State Personnel Commission, may we do those things? We used to have to send applications. We used to have to send the application of the finalists. We used to have to conform to exactly what they said to pay them. We used to only be able to promote the people they said we could promote. And we don't have to ask them any of that now. We only could have classifications that they approved. Now we can classify jobs like we think they need to be classified.
Now, under option, let's assume for conversation purposes, we go with the option 2. Who would have that power and authority to do whatever is necessary for those employees?
For the things I just named,
Yes.
you would continue to have it. You have it now, and you would continue to
Commissioners.
have that. Yes, the
Right.
commissioners would ultimately.
And as far as the professional folks in hiring, what are the guidelines? Won't there be some guidelines there? Because I don't know that we're qualified in that respect.
They are already in place.
Okay.
The qualifications, the prerequisite education and experience is already part of the classification system.
Part of this is based on the federal code that as long as we accept the federal funds, there's certain rules that have to be adhered to. And the way we've got it set up right now meets all the federal codes. And, you know, if we don't change it, we know we're safe. I guess is the way.
And my concern there is, and I don't mean to hog the conversation, but I don't want us to get to a point where we dummy down the system for political reasons, you know what I mean? We want to maintain high standards and continue to keep them up there.
Right. Thank you. We're not allowed to do that. To get the substantial equivalency, we had to meet a very high standard.
Great.
And we did, and have satisfied them since.
Thank each of you.
Yeah, and you were maybe talking about sort of who has the authority to supervise whom a little bit, and some of that would be adjusted slightly under the Consolidated Human Services Agency model. But again, it wouldn't appreciably feel very different than what you already have. The difference would be that the Director of Human Services would report to the manager, but with a consolidated board, the manager would still have to get the advice and consent of that board as it pertains to that personnel choice.
I had one other thought a moment ago that fleeted, so if I may have another chance, you sort of summarize those federal regulations that Mr. Johnson mentioned as the merit principle for selection. And so that is our principle for why we pick, whom we pick. And so we have to stick to that. That's the best practice, and we have every intention of sticking with that.
Well, Ben, your role is, you're like a policeman there too, aren't you? Aren't you going to be?
Sort of, but I don't have any handcuffs. So.
I know. But let's say you know, Bill doesn't live forever, neither does Harold Bass. But whoever replaces you, the system is in place.
Yes, sir, the system is in place, and there are two human resources analysts educated at the master's level who report to me.
Good.
So the system is in place and in very good shape.
Great, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Commissioner Cowell's got a couple questions.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
then Commissioner Flint's got a few.
Larry, I feel like that you've been asked every question it is except your last name. It's so long. I just want to get down to just a few unscrupulous things. In your estimation, in consolidation and putting this together, it's very serious if we have to look at what we're looking at and what we're trying to adhere to here. Do you, what do you see to be the main problem in consolidating human services in our county and working together in flexibility? Do you see it being more flexible? Is it a cost savings for our county? Exactly how would you categorize it?
I think it's a cost avoidance more than it is a cost savings. I think that, again, my system is changing. The DSS system is going to be changed by this time next year. It's going to look, even if we don't do consolidation, we're going to be changing our eligibility system in a big way. The silos that Adam was talking about are coming down. I mean, those silos are going to start to crumble before probably early part of next year. So we're going to change anyhow, Mr. Cowell. I mean, you know, whether we do this or not. And I don't know all of Glenn's things that are on the horizon, but I suspect he's got some similar things out on the horizon. I know he's got the electronic medical records coming.
Well, for either department in what you're doing, if you don't consolidate or change, you're not
It's
going
going
to
to
stay
change
current.
anyhow.
It's going to change anyway. We know that. We're aware of that.
But I think if we do it together, if we put our heads together and our top staff together, I think we can figure out ways to avoid costs down the road and take advantage of whatever. We have some opportunities, and I know Jennifer could speak to this, but because we're in the place we're in of being a very bad county as far as health concerns and all this, KB Reynolds has extended some really wonderful opportunities to us. Jennifer's working on a lot of grants and things like that that we can, Glenn and I can do together. I mean, I think that there's some real good opportunities.
Thank you. Glenn, do you see this combination of putting it together being an inspiration that we could use to consolidate it and actually make our services more inherent to the people and make it more better for the citizens of this county?
Well, it certainly has that potential. You know, as Larry said, you know, our worlds are changing just drastically in healthcare. You know, I don't know that anyone has a crystal ball. I mean, it's, you know, with the Affordable Care Act, you know, what will healthcare look like in 2 years from now? That's anyone's guess. You know, I think everyone, whether you're a hospital or whether you're a private provider or whether you're a large healthcare system, you know, I think everyone is really just scrambling, and the changes are coming at us so quickly that really one of the big problems that I see currently is that we really don't quite have the expertise that we really do to be able to deal with some of these complex changes that are coming our way. And I think that's one thing that we're going to need to do is understand that we're going to need the right people to help us get where we need to be in the years to come. Because I'll give you an example. When you look at the county health system as large as they were, well, even with that, you know, they saw that there was a need to have an affiliation with Carolina's Medical, and I think their top 5 people now will be actually employees of Carolina's Medical to be able to help take advantage of some of the buying opportunities and having maybe access to some specialized skill sets that you might not have access in the past. I know one of the things that we're working on currently is that the IT end of things. You know, these, I think that's one area that we have to have people that understand the social service end of things, and they have to understand the public health end of things, and realizing that all that continues to change. You know, and the requirements and the expectations, you can have, whether it's at the federal level or state level, if they want, or even, you know, insurance companies, whoever you may have payers for, if they want information or data in a certain way, you've got to be able to accommodate that. And so these, and if there are opportunities for us to collect information one time, you know, that's always been, I guess, a pet peeve of mine is that, you know, people shouldn't have to come within county government and go to 2, 3 different agencies and have to tell their name, their address, their telephone number, the directions to their property, you know, multiple times. You know, if we've got your name one time, hopefully we've got a system in place that can automatically populate that next screen, and we can just make sure that what information we do have is current. So I think those are opportunities that we certainly have moving forward to be able to provide, you know, better services and you know, really having information and using it well, I think is going to be to our advantage. But you've got to have people in place that understand the complexities of these systems, because they're tremendous, and you know, and it comes with risk. When you get into electronic health records, yeah, it's great having an electronic format, but let that get out in the wrong hands, and with the federal HIPAA laws and confidentiality laws, you know, there's got to be the people that can have those checks and balances in place, so that we make sure that truly our information and our data is safe and secure in an electronic format.
Glenn, you covered a lot of aspects right there that's absolutely critical as far as I'm concerned, and how this thing's going to form and come together and actually work in the future. The trained personnel and the IT people that you mentioned, the expertise and the educated people is going to be in place to put these programs together and be able to function on that level. We have trained people here in the county. We got good people and nice people. To what level do you foresee, as an estimation in your respect, where we're going to have to go, and where is it going to take us in the future, is what we're going to need to function, to make this function in professional people, and to do what are we going to need in these different departments to make that work? Because I'll tell you what, it's just like anything that we just went through recently. You've got to have correct people and educated people to make that work. And David Wicker being part of the board here that you suggested, as far as I'm concerned, is an absolute. It needs to be. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. But as far as what I just asked you, how would you relate to that?
Well, again, I think we're already putting that into place. You know, we've all have Larry's shop. They already have an IT person. Actually, has some background in the health area too. And we're right now. Actually, we've got a couple interviews scheduled for the IT position in public health, and you know, we're hoping to get the person in place that has, you know, some strong background in electronic health records and working in healthcare environment, in addition to an IT environment. Because, you know, at the end of the day, too, we've got to have people in place that, as we progress more and more to electronic health records, we've got staff in all different ends of the spectrum. You know, that we have nurse practitioners that were educated years ago. You know, that you know, they weren't educated in with the utilization of electronic health records. You know, this is kind of a new thing in healthcare. It's only been the last several years that really you're starting to see a major rollout of electronic health records in the healthcare industry. But it's going to be a learning curve, and you've got to have people that have the technical expertise to be able to make sure that we're handling that information correctly. But also they've got to be able to work individually with staff that are at various ends of the spectrum to help to raise everybody to where they need to be, so that everyone is comfortable, you know, in that environment. Because ultimately that's where you're going to need to be. And you know, we've got some highly skilled people that are great medical providers, but their area of expertise may not be in the electronic area.
It's out of their text line, right, you might say.
Yeah.
Glenn, listen, with all that said and done, with the people that we'll be putting in line in these positions and places to handle it and everything, you and I both know that technology and IT updates itself every 90 days at an average and changes consistently. With that said, would it not be practical in some respects that somewhere within the county or some respect that we set up something on a continuous education level for these people to be continuously educated so that they'll be reinforced with the new ideas and the new technology that's been introduced so that we can stay current in the county and stay on top of what we're doing so that we don't run inefficient in these levels? Is that a practical idea that could be implemented or done?
Well, certainly that's where, you know, it needs to be, I guess, like when we all graduated from high school or college or whatever, you know, we were quickly reminded that, you know, that was only the beginning, that life is a lifelong learning process, and I think certainly that is in all these areas. Some of the challenges that we certainly have at the end of the day is that we still are kind of a creature, being a county government, we still are kind of a creature of the state at the end of the day, because the state and the feds, they're pretty much telling us, laying down the guidelines and the rules and the requirements that we have to fulfill. And so, you know, one of the challenges we're running into on the public health side is that, yes, with the hospitals and other private medical providers, they're already getting their electronic health records in place. The challenge we have as public health departments is that we have to have that interface with the state to share all of that data, you know, on our patient population served, because they're receiving federal passed down dollars, and they have to be able to report to the federal government, you know, on all the numbers, the demographics and things like that. And so whatever you have has got to communicate, you know, with the state. And so, you know, the state doesn't have a great track record when it comes to anything in the world of IT. And I think that's been one of our largest challenges, is that actually you're seeing individual county governments way ahead of where the state is in these areas. And so I don't know, that's...
I think we have opportunity, though. I do think we've got an opportunity. I was with my brother-in-law last weekend at the beach, and he trains doctors at the hospital in East Carolina, and that's what he does. He teaches them how to use electronic medical records. And you know, he was just saying how it's a hard, even for doctors, as smart as they are. I mean, it's a hard thing for them to learn. But I think Glenn is exactly right. If we get the right people, and I think I've got the right person right now, and I think we're real close to getting the right person to Glenn, they can do that. I mean, we can have an ongoing, it can be a constant training process. And you know, I think that we're going to have to upgrade our staff. I mean, we're going through it at DSS right now. Debbie was on the line all day today with the state getting ready for NC Fast. They're anticipating 50% more people, you know, getting Medicaid if everything stays in place the way it is right now. And we've got to be able to mobilize our troops to be able to handle that many people and not hire additional people. I mean, we've got to do it smarter and not not with more people. So yeah, we're sort of in the same place. I think somehow on our side, they might be a little bit further ahead, but they don't have a very good track record either, you know, so maybe it's going to work. I hope it's going to work.
Well, Larry, I agree with you. We can't sit back and wait for this to happen and then try to educate our people to catch up on the curve. We've got to stay ahead of that curve.
That's right.
And the only way we stay ahead of that curve is re-educate all the ones that are responsible to make that happen and to make that work efficiently within that so that we don't lose any services for the public, the people, and actually we can enhance those services and make them more effective. But, you know, I've heard people talk about us joining other counties in the future, consolidate with other counties in the areas to make it more effective. I don't know if that'll be a reality or not, but I have heard, I've heard talk about that. But anyway, that's something that you might have heard at some point in time, and I really don't know what you think about that ever happening or not. But I don't think that'd be a reality right at the moment, not with what I see in some areas. But I want to ask you just one thing. On the Consolidated Human Service Board, if we appoint one, and it was set up in the way it is set up and to be done, would we need an advisory committee? Would it be any use for having an advisory committees? And if they did so, in what capacity would they work?
Public health has to have an advisory committee.
Well, if you have the Consolidated Human Service Age Board, that would be, the membership of that board is pretty much the membership of the Board of Health, plus your community, your consumers, or your representation from the consumer base. So you wouldn't have to have another advisory board on top of a Consolidated Human Service Agency board. You know, one of the things Larry and I have talked about is because, you know, these are very complex organizations and a lot of issues and things, you know, there may be where we have subcommittees or something. There might be a DSS subcommittee, might be a public health subcommittee that deals with, you know, and then takes that maybe to the larger board. So, you know, there are different things, possibilities out there.
I think we've got a really good DSS board. We've got a really good public health board. And if we can somehow put those two elements together over a matter of time, you know, can have them become that consolidated board. And, you know, certainly the first year it might be good to try, you know, putting those two groups together and make one board.
So that would be the public health board?
Let me ask something. Do I still have the floor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just a minute. If you was, I agree with you on that, joining them together. I'm sure it's going to cause you some problems to do that in all respects and everything. A while ago, Adam, you mentioned something. I want to go back to one thing that you said. Did you need anything from the chairman of the board or anybody as far as David Wicker's concerned?
We would need that to be a motion and approved.
We can do that at the tail end of the session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Flynn, and then Commissioner Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Getting back to a couple of things that were mentioned a while ago, you were talking about the State Personnel Act, and at that particular time, you were talking about kind of the Department of Social Services people, but does that same act apply to the employees of public health?
Yes.
It does,
Yes.
entirely.
Exactly the same way.
And when we're talking about this advisory committee, the ad hoc committee that we voted the other night to appoint, is, in my mind, when you say ad hoc, that is kind of a temporary advisory. So at some point down the road, that particular committee disappears and another committee would be appointed, made up of people from social services and people from the public health department.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. The legislation specifically says, and if you can see the screens, those are the folks by profession or by whatever they do have to be on the Consolidated Human Services Board. You can have up to 25 members. That doesn't add up to 25, so you can add others. But you have to have at least someone that fits that qualification. And that kind of gets at what Mr. Travis, I think, interjected too, is the Consolidated Human Services Board, in effect, becomes your public health If, again, the if is, that's assuming you consolidate public health and DSS. The legislature does not tell you you have to consolidate those two agencies, but if you do that, you have to have these representatives from public health.
Then what good is having a public health advisory committee? What would be their function?
You wouldn't have to, and if you do option 2. If you choose option 1 or 3, then you
Well, I'm talking about if we do option 2.
Right.
You do not have to put a...
You do not have to have a separate public health advisory committee at that point, because the board itself will have the makeup of your public health board right now. Now you could, to answer your question, you could, if you had a program in public health, for example, let's say environmental health, you wanted to have a committee that somehow advised you on things, you could create that, but you don't have to. That's totally up to you.
Okay. But Glenn, I understood in our discussions that a public health advisory committee would be required in this particular setup. Is that correct?
Not with this option
Okay.
here. If, like Adam said, I think with option 1 and 3, it would be required, but with this option, basically you've got that representation right there on that board.
With the consolidation of DSS public health, knowing, as I made a comment some time ago, there's still two big elephants in the room, and that's the State Department of Social Services and the State Department of Health. What is how do they view these consolidation efforts that are going along? They got a lot of turf to protect down there, and I would certainly hate to see us get involved in trying to develop efficiencies here in the county, and knowing that a lot of their dictates, a lot of your dictates, come from the state, both of you, and it really wouldn't work. I mean, maybe I'm just being a little bit over-conscious here, but I would certainly like to see something from the state and their involvement and their approval of what we're trying to do. And I entertain your comments either way.
I'd be glad to speak to that. Just came from the meeting when we talked about that. I think the biggest issue the state has right now is cost allocation. They want to make sure that we don't try to use DSS funds to do something that legally we can't do it. And likewise, public health funds, use them to do something that's specifically designed to be done by a public health professional. And on our side, the same thing. They want to be very careful that we don't mix the funds where we shouldn't. But at the same time, when you get into administration, there's some real opportunities in administration, because there's more county money involved in our administration than there is in the actual service delivery. The service delivery for us sometimes is as high as 90 or 100% funds coming in. When we get into administration, some things it's more like 50-50, 50 county, 50 other funds. So I know that's one of the things they're concerned about, but they're not going to, unless something happens at the federal level, they're not going to be able to say, well, you don't have to do this anymore. They're still going to monitor, they're still going to audit, they're still going to do the things that they do now. But I think they recognize that change is coming even for them. And quite honestly, right now, with the folks at the state, I don't think many of them even know if they're going to be around, after December. And so I think the reality is a lot of them are looking at maybe not being around, that there's going to be that much of a change at Raleigh, at the Raleigh level. So it's a very interesting time. I mean, it really is, and I don't think people are sticking their neck out too far right now because of the impending change that's coming one way or the other. There's going to be a change in administration either way, whether it's a party change or just a person.
So am I hearing you say that the dictates that come out of Raleigh, that if this consolidated board becomes a fact and sets up its own guidelines and its own rules, then we don't really have to pay any attention to them.
No, I'm not saying that. Not at all. I'm saying, no, I think that what I'm saying is, I think that there's going to be a different model developing at the state level too, to accommodate the changes that are coming. Because a lot of the programs have been in their own silos in Raleigh. I mean, the silos didn't start at the county level. The silos started in Raleigh. And we just basically mirrored what was being dictated to us. They're going to change too. Those silos in Raleigh are going to go away. You may not have all the different little departments down there like you have now. They may be one big consolidated department, you know, telling us what to do. So I do think that the legislation is going to dictate a lot of changes in Raleigh as well. Yeah, so
I know I was good to be able to participate in the group that went to Asheville and looked at the, I think they call it some kind of bipartisan group board, and I can't remember now exactly. But what struck me there, that they started this process, I think back in about 2005. Here it is 2007, and they're just really beginning to really come together to where they can develop some efficiencies. So my point is, let's not, if we do go ahead with this, let's not think that these changes are going to come overnight. I mentioned in the last commissioners meeting, what we did was to take a little baby step the other night when we appointed this ad hoc committee. And it's a long road down the pipe before we're going to really see any really good out of it, I guess. Well, the other thing that struck me out of the Asheville meeting was that their cost avoidance, and I think Adam, someone had mentioned it, somewhere between $4 and $5 million. But I think people need to understand that this was a cost avoidance. It was not money that was saved that went back that reduced the tax value. Tax value up there still stayed the same. And this money did not go back into the general fund, but still it could possibly be looked at as not having expenses somewhere down the road and being able to fund those expenses. So it's that's all I've got right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Flynn. Commissioner Travis, you got a couple of questions?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll just say you'll probably wonder what I'm thinking, and I just want to tell you, I'm not looking at cost savings. That's never been on my mind. It's been about, you know, outcome-based management. I feel like if you know these cuts are coming, if you can start planning now without affecting the service that we're providing, even if it's combining administration staff, which I think combining administration staff will save, like you say, costs of, you know, avoidance, that reflects back onto the service. So instead of taking that money back and, like he says, going to reduce tax, I'm not even thinking about reducing taxes. I'm thinking using it for that service, for them cuts that eventually be coming. In essence, that is saving taxpayers' money. Am I correct? You understand what I'm saying, Larry?
Yeah.
So, you know, not only am I looking at the flexibility of both groups working together and crossing them boundary lines and coming up with great service for the citizens, and ultimately that's the goal. You know, that's the whole goal. So if we can get both administrative staffs talking together, working together, I think that's the whole point of I like option 2, because you don't have 2 boards no more. You have one combined board, and you're talking to each other. We're working together. It's just like we're trying to do for economic development, one-stop shop. You know, I like that idea. I like where if I'm a citizen, I come there, I know exactly where I'm going. I don't have to come back tomorrow because I forgot to go to mental health or health department, or I forgot to go see Larry, or you know what I mean. I like that one-stop shop. It's all about customer service, I think there's been a problem with, you know, what, turnover rates. You know, I've talked to citizens that said they had to wait 4 or 5 hours. And I don't think that's good service, and that's why I would like to have both sides together to work out that service quality. Because we're providing a service to the citizens, they're paying for it. So we might as well give them the best possible service we can give them. And that's what my goal is. I don't want to take money away. I wish, I'm talking to Lance about this, I wish we could give more money. You know, and we're working on ways right now, this board, to, you know, hopefully we can get water and sewer revenue neutral. That gives more money back to the taxpayer general fund to be able to use in certain areas that can help. Because I hear Glenn's, you know, comments about how poor the health in the county is. I do, I hear it. But on the other hand, I got 20 other issues that are poor too. I'm trying to fix all of them. But, you know, it ain't about, for me, it's not about cost savings. It's not about that. It's about duplication of services. Let's combine them. Let's get both sides talking. Let's get the computer systems working together. You know, let's talk across lines and come up with programs that benefit the citizens. I think this board will agree with that. You know, it's never been looked at as cost savings. I mean, I know we say that a lot, but you know, I guess when we're talking about combining, everybody starts thinking they're trying to save money, they're going to eliminate jobs. Well, no, it ain't about that. It still belongs to the citizens. It don't belong to the county or the board. It's the citizens' health department and Department of Social Services. So we should try to strive to make it the best programs we possibly can. And I really think option 2 is the best option to go. Only thing I say is I don't want a 25-member board. I think if you can keep the board members low as you possibly can, you get more things done. I don't know how the structure of these boards will be set up. I don't know. I don't want lifetime memberships on these boards. I'm a big proponent of term limits. I mean, I'm telling you this is what I'm looking for when this group gets together and talk. I mean, we just had someone that was on the Board of Trustees, RCC, 23 years. If you can't get something accomplished in 23 years, then you don't need to be on the board. I just feel like if you keep it rotating, get fresh minds coming in, let's keep good ideas coming, we can really make this happen. And I agree with Tommy, it's not going to happen overnight. I don't expect it to. It might be not happen until I'm gone, you know, but I think if we get good people on these ad hoc boards, let's come up with some great ideas. I don't want the same people sitting on the same boards. I want to see some fresh new ideas. You know, it's a lot of young people out there hurting too, and if we advertise, I think we can get these people in. You know, that's my whole point. It's a lot going on in this county, and I think this is a very important issue. Health Department and Department of Social Services are the biggest, you know, departments in the county pretty much that we got to help. And if we can get new, fresh ideas, we can get more people involved. And you know, we can keep trucking along and we can get this done. You know, it shouldn't take 7 years to do it. We can get it done, even though I know we want to take our time and make sure we plan it right. And I agree with Glenn too. You know, I like what Buncombe County did to come in and serve a number of 10. I mean, I saw that. I like that, but because it keeps the flow going. People, okay, I'm 20 more to go and I'm in there, you know. But as it sits down there now, you know, they're sitting there, you know, I walk by there and look, they're sitting. And, you know, I know they're like, damn, you know, it's taking forever. But I hope we can improve service. I mean, even on the social service side, you know, you know, everybody knows Larry's got a great team. You know, Debbie's sitting back there. I'll give a plug to her. But you know, we can get these great minds together. I mean, Debbie is the future. Debbie's probably going to take Larry's spot one of these days. So you might as well get them together and start coming up with these great plans. Jennifer's one of them. I mean, everybody, we got some great people. We might as well utilize them. And I think consolidating, like I said, option 2 is the best way to go. I don't know how the other board feels, and I'm very interested in getting the ad hoc committee together and coming up with a plan. I'm open to rearranging what we got here in Rockingham County to make it more flow friendly for citizens. Because that's, like I said, it's all that matters is the citizens, taking care of the citizens. I think that's all I got.
All right, Commissioner Travis.
I'd love to know what their thoughts are, Keith.
Well, that's where we're going. The only thing, I know that Larry and I discussed the software issue. We brought it up a couple times, and I do, and I certainly will be an advocate for our IT guy, David, to be on.
I think you're talking about the Q flow that we had seen up there that enabled both sides to talk, and I think that's something that you know would be a good, you know, for David to take a look at that. I think he's looked at it, but I think that it sort of jumped out at me as a sort of low-hanging fruit, you know, of something that we probably could go after pretty quick, you know, and see it help us, even if we weren't in the same physical location. I mean, you can do a heck of a lot if you're connected computer-wise. You don't always have to be in the same room or same wing, you know. And I think that's exactly right. That's a good starting point.
And with David's team looking at all the software, and I know that Larry and I have talked about, you know, we're talking either somewhere where we bumped into each other, but you know there was an issue of quote cost of the software. Well, I mean, you're going to have to make some investments in order to avoid this cost, the cost avoidance anyway. And using Buncombe County, I mean, you can't take theirs and put it here because it don't work. But looking at, you can take pieces of it and massage it like a little piece of clay and make it come out. But we're still going to have, this board is going to have to be willing to invest some money in the proper software, but make sure that we do the software right the first time, instead of saying, for another $10,000 we should have got this, you know, instead of that, and then you're gonna turn around and have to revamp everything. Then you lost the $150,000 that you used because you come $10,000 short to try to save something. I think you need to look far ahead, and if a quote average system, I'm throwing some numbers out, is $150, and a premium system is $200, pay the $200. You go to the upper level.
If I can comment to that.
Sure.
We were about to jump, you know, Adam and I went and looked at a system, and we were about ready to jump about $150,000 worth into something, and now we found out that we don't have to do that. The state's developing that as a part of the program that we're going to get in the next 2 or 3 months. And talking about cost avoidance, I mean, we've still got that money sitting over there in Adam's little fund over there, you know, that we earn through our achieving our objectives. And you know, we're ready to invest that money into this if that's what we need to do, because we were going to spend it on the DSS stuff that looks like we're not going to have to spend it on. And I think that my conversations with KB, that they certainly have some interest in it as well, that Jennifer helping us if they can. KB Reynolds.
Well, I mean, that's good. And right now, I'd rather just, I think it'd be good for all of us to hear from y'all. Whoever wants to start.
Well, I'm really happy to hear this careful discussion of what the reasons for embarking on this might be, and who, like Mr. Bass said, who's going to benefit from this, because, you know, I think we all know that human beings are complex creatures. Their health needs are complex, their social needs are complex, and those two things are interrelated. So it's nice to see everyone looking towards approaching those needs in a more coordinated way, and I do think that brings the potential for better outcomes for the service users. It also has the potential for some cost avoidance, but I think if we're going to look to outside sources for help with this project, particularly foundations, and I'm speaking in my own experience and not on behalf of any foundation or organization, they tend to be most interested in improving the lives of citizens, and many of them have a focus on improving the lives of the underserved. So I'm happy to see that that's at the front and center of this effort. And I think as long as we continue that discussion and keep it at the front and center, that is probably a good guiding principle for the work of this advisory committee. So I just appreciate the careful discussion that you all have engaged in.
Anybody else?
Ms. Crutchfield?
I was, well, any closer to me. Sorry, I get talk loud. I went with the group to Asheville, and it was so, to me, it was just fascinating. I thought they worked real well. What I was most impressed by was the way they spent time. Tommy was saying that we need to not do this so quickly that we make mistakes. We need to get the people that are involved in this, which would be people who work in social services, people who work already in public health. They would be worried, nervous, afraid they're going to lose their jobs. Buncombe County said that they were so careful that they didn't upset people and tried to bring people along and educate them and assure them that they would not lose their jobs. You know, they were going to try to work with them and try to help them and try to get them through it. And it was years that it took for them to get to where they finally got to. But they worked slowly, they got stakeholders involved, and they worked slowly and got things up to speed. But they did it, I thought, in such a kind way, in the fact that they didn't scare people or upset people. They did it slowly enough that they kept everybody informed and everybody felt comfortable and not threatened by this. And change is threatening. Sure. And so, you know, and as long as you do it the right way and involve everybody in the plans and the process, then you get a better outcome, I think.
I really don't have a lot of comments. Having worked in public services for 25 years, change is inevitable. It's coming. I think that it's just up to us to help the clientele that we serve understand what those changes means and what the implications are for their needs, as well as the professional staff who will be providing the services. We're all in a situation now where we're all doing more with less. And, you know, a lot of the leaders at social services, and I'm sure in other agencies as well, have come up with some really innovative ways to keep the staff motivated, because we can't do it from a pay standpoint, but I'm really excited about the opportunity of working with something on the ground and going with it. And I also believe in bottom-up instead of top-down management. You know, we need to listen to the people that we are here to serve, and we also need to listen to the people that do the work every day, because I think those two will enhance what it is that this board is supposed to be doing. Thank you.
I've already said enough.
Well,
I'll yield my time to Ben.
well, you're certainly right. Our customers are our people and the citizens that we all serve. And doing something that is of such a magnitude as this is, and affecting the amount of people that it will affect by doing some of these changes, and Commissioner Flint exactly was right on as far as taking our time, doing things in a very good way, and as one of you mentioned, make sure that we do hear from the people we serve, who are the citizens, and the people that work together as a team. Hear from those, because there's a lot of valuable information within the employees that can help make these changes massageable to where it's going to work. It's not going to look like Buncombe County. It's not going to look like Wade. So we've got to get that input from our employees, and we also got to get that key input is from the people we serve. And then we can massage it from there. Has any other commissioner got any questions? Go, Commissioner Flynn.
One question just for clarification. Is there a public hearing required with the use of option 2?
I don't think so, but we're getting some clarification on some of those procedural things, but we will certainly let you know. And when the ad hoc committee comes back, we will have an answer to that question.
And the application that you submitted last week to the school government, I believe you said those applications really weren't due until 21st of September. Do you have any idea what their timeline is to notify the counties as to who they're going to help and when?
The only indication is from the application itself that they were hoping to do it in the fall. So to me, that means before December, but I don't have any more information than that.
I think you will see that being during the fall, because that whole project with the School of Government and the work that they've done putting this together was through a grant with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And so I think as that grant ends, they're going to get all of this work done, under where the grant's assisting with the cost of that.
And of course, I'll also say this too, depending on the tone as we go forward, I think part of the purpose of the facilitation was to help groups like this come together and sort of come to consensus. If we're making that kind of progress, I think it remains to be determined how much help we need with the facilitation. But I think it was the right thing to do to ask for it, and as we get to that point, we'll know what and how it will help us.
You still got, then the timeline for what we're attempting to do here, we've appointed a committee, but the committee will come back perhaps with a recommendation that we accept option 2 or whatever back to this board, and the board at that point will agree to option 2. Is that
if that's
the thing? And then at that particular point, the ad hoc committee just pretty much goes forward. I mean, while there'll be some suggestions and I'm sure some comments from the commissioners, they're the ones that have the ball and are running with it. Is that right?
When we asked to form the ad hoc committee, we left it open as far as how and when it would be dissolved. As we've heard today, there's a sense of pacing ourselves. So depending on how quickly you want to create, let's say you do choose option 2, that doesn't mean you have to, the next meeting, select the committee, the consolidated board, and have it in place. So under some circumstances, you might say, we want to continue to use the ad hoc committee to advise us and come up with a step-by-step plan for how we're going to get to wherever we're going to get. So the rule, there's no hard and fast, you've got to get rid of them at that point. You could continue to use them in a capacity if everyone was willing to serve.
Adam, if I could, there's a requirement of a nominating committee that I guess this could segue into that or become that or whatever, or nominate who's going to be on the nominating committee.
The decision to go with option 2 is not necessarily a decision that we are creating a consolidated human agency on this date. But when we decide that we're going to do that, the rules or the law states that the Board of Commissioners has to appoint a nominating committee that will then bring you recommendations of who would serve on that board. You could see naturally that the ad hoc committee might become your nominating committee at that point.
Thank you. Let me ask you real quick, Adam. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You got your ad hoc committee, so they're meeting right now. Come up with a game plan on how both sides feel about the situation. Really, pretty much, I guess this board will probably consider them as the nominating committee too, to let them, they know more about their professions than we do. So they will nominate who they would like to see, or who that board would like to see on that CHS board, right?
Right.
So in the next couple months, I guess, they'll be meeting, trying to iron out any kind of problems of how they think they should work. They'll be giving us updates on what they've seen so far. I guess y'all are gonna be meeting once a month, or y'all gonna speed it up and every 2 weeks? I mean, how are y'all gonna do that?
We haven't actually established our meeting timelines yet, since we were just created a week or two ago. But the idea was to get a sense of direction from the commissioners tonight, and then come back with a recommendation. It sounds like it might be option 2. And at that point, you know, that's when really the ball gets sort of in play, if you will.
Well, and I agree with what they said, you know, I don't think this board should be looking at, you know, getting rid of any positions. I don't think that's the case, and I agree with training those to, you know, if we got a position that we don't need because of the consolidation, then let's train the people we have to fit into the program we want to do. I don't think this has to be a crazy process. I mean, I've already got emails from people thinking that we're up here eliminating positions, and I don't think that's the case. We're trying to better the service and work together more. I think she's right that we need to get that information out. You know, I don't know what Maple Scott is, but maybe working with our, you know, public information officer. And I agree, you know, last year, Adam, this board recommended that we start getting some feedback from customers from public health, customers from DSS. I don't even know if we've even started getting any feedback. I don't know if we got that plan started to get feedback. And
They were right on that.
yeah, so I mean, I know we've already asked for feedback, and I know, I guess, directors are getting that feedback. So I'm sure that's something that this ad hoc committee could look at. And hey, I strongly urge you to give it to the employees and see what they think. I mean, I think you're right. You need to include them in the process too. And they're down in the trenches and they're digging the holes. So let's see how they want to get out of it. So let's see where we're at. Now, I appreciate y'all coming, and I hope I hear more from you, because it is exciting starting something new, and I'm excited to be part of it, and I hope I can benefit or help the county as much as I can. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Mr. Travis. Mr. Bass, got a follow-up?
Yeah, just real quickie. First of all, it's good to see people getting together, creating, and I sincerely like the sense of direction that Ms. Lowe and Ms. Crutchfield offered us in your comments. I was watching, and Commissioner Flint, this thing's a long time coming, and we don't need to mess it up by hurrying it up. I was watching TV the other night, and I think one of the late shows said when 2 people go in a room and 3 people come out, something's been created. I don't know if he stayed in there 9 months or what, you know, but
I'll show you watching.
The point is, we don't need to get in a hurry and mess this thing up. And we need to allow the folks who know what they're doing tell us, and then we make the decisions, you know, accordingly. But I sincerely appreciate this opportunity to be involved as we have. You like that, huh? Okay. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bass, I couldn't have said it any better. Well said. Commissioner Calvin, you got a follow-up?
I have a statement I want to tell you, Glenn and Larry. There's a lot of input here that we can get from different agencies and different agents and people. I'm sure that's going to be considered and going to be very important in impacting how we do this thing and how it is put together. But I think by working with the people, stuff that you're good connected with, the employees and things, and the people that's going to be directly affected, how it's going to work, to consider their ideas and use their input, and to have whatever collection possibility you want, or have them bring them to you, however you want to go about doing that. I think is that fundamental, because I agree with what Commissioner Craig Travis said here. That, to me, that is fundamental in what we're trying to do, to let them know where they're at, and to educate them and to inform them where we stand on any issues and that, so there's no misconception whatsoever in where we're going and where we're coming from. And there's nothing, they understand what's going on, okay? And I appreciate you doing that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all of you for spending the evening with us. I know you had better things to do. But I also want to thank the media, the Eden Regional News and Rockingham Update for helping us out here as well. I appreciate everybody's attendance, and as Adam mentioned earlier, we was going to hold it off till the end to add David Wicker to the ad hoc team at this time.
Do you need a motion?
I would entertain a motion to add David Wicker to the ad hoc team.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to add David Wicker to the ad hoc committee.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Travis. Would you like to second it, Commissioner Callum? Got a motion and a second to add David Wicker to the ad hoc committee. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed likewise. Again, thank y'all for this evening. Thank you for the information. I hope things work well. I'm sure they will as we take these slow steps along. This time I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
You got your motion made to adjourn by Commissioner Callum, second by Commissioner Travis. All in favor to adjourn, signify by saying aye. Aye.